and welcome to Hard Copy, the program that will bring you the people behind the news. I'm Maokbe Ogun. Restructuring is one word that Nigerians like to talk about a lot, but it often means different things to different people. At least so says the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo. Listen to him in his own words.
Sometimes, we're not quite certain what this restructuring means. For some, it means creating more states. Now, is that economically viable? Does that make sense, given that the ones we have are not, doing as well as they could, as well as is expected? So the question really for me is, what does restructuring mean?
Well, that's the big question. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Joe Abba, who is the Director General of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. He is one man who should know a thing or two about what restructuring should mean for Nigerians. It promises to be an interesting discussion. Just stay with us. Dr. Joe Abba, you're welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you, Mokwe.
Well, let's start with that very controversial word, restructuring. What does it mean to you?
It means two different things to me, one as a public service reformer and another as a Nigerian. As a public service reformer, restructuring means getting the right structure for the public service to function. So, as an example, we've merged certain ministries in the last year or so. We need to make sure that they have a functioning structure so that we don't drop the ball. They can continue to deliver the services they were set up to deliver and achieve the ambitions of the merger. So what we don't want, for instance, is a scenario where we've merged the ministries of power, works, and housing, and we simply have three silos. And so restructuring for me means weaving these three into one coherent ministry that can deliver the intentions of the restructuring. Same thing with our merger of the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Police Affairs. Same thing with the merger of Information and Culture. So all of these things, for me, restructuring means having a vehicle through which you can achieve the stated aims.
So that's for you as a public servant?
As a public servant.
As a Nigerian?
And as someone who's responsible for reforming public services. As a Nigerian, it's a much wider question, and I think the Vice President is absolutely right, that it means different things to different people. For me, I think the starting point is the 1999 Constitution that we have, because I think the design of that Constitution makes certain assumptions. So it makes assumptions, for instance, that the purpose of government is to distribute resources equitably. And so we have a situation, for instance, where whether the president likes it or not, he must have at least 36 ministers, whether he needs it or not. And so that's something the Constitution sets out. The Constitution also enshrines the principle of federal character. It enshrines a certain independence, a level of independence of states. It enshrines autonomy of local government, at least in theory. Now, the question is this structure working for Nigeria? Is the presidential system of governance that we have, is it working for Nigerians?
So I'm going to ask you quickly, have you been able to weave this to beliefs for you as a public servant and as a Nigerian together, or are they existing in silos?
The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and therefore whatever we do, we try to make the best out of the constraints that the Constitution itself presents. And so for us, as an example, we look at how we can enthrone a performance management system that ensures that merit is not sacrificed at the altar of representation. So yes, you need representation in a diverse society like Nigeria, but that doesn't mean you cannot also get merit. There's no country, there's no state in this country where if you apply the correct rules and practices, you can't get the best people representing that state. And so the problem hasn't so much been the federal character, it's been the misapplication of it.
I'm going to talk to you quickly about two different things. Now, you talked about the thinking behind making the three merging ministries, as it were, but that it would seem that from the operation, what we still have is three different silos under one big umbrella. They're not being interwoven. First of all, let's quickly get the thinking behind the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. Quite a number of people thought that was a little surprising. What was the thinking behind merging those three ministries together? Okay,
first of all, I need to correct the impression that they are operating as three different silos. They are not. I'm saying what I said is we need to make sure they are not. And a lot of work has actually gone into weaving that ministry into a coherent whole. What was the thinking behind Power, Works and Housing? Well, first of all, Mr. President has the constitutional authority to create ministries in the way that he wishes. The important thing is we've gone down from having 31 ministries to now having 24. Now, if you look at Power, Works and Housing, they are basically infrastructure type activities. And so, you could have called it a Ministry of Infrastructure, and it would be the same thing, and nobody will bat an eyelid. But if you look at the critical issues that it covers, the issue of power, electric power, the issue of works, which essentially is road infrastructure, and the issue of housing, focusing on social housing, then it's clear that it's a ministry that is focused on delivering infrastructure.
Well, it could also have covered transport if we're just talking infrastructure, because transport infrastructure too would come under infrastructure, wouldn't it?
Then it would be a very, very unwieldy ministry if you were to merge that with transport, because with transport you already have rail, which is huge. You have inland waterways. You have aviation as well. So that's a
that's
huge
the reason I asked you about it, the thinking that was behind it. Perhaps there was some other thinking aside the fact that they were all infrastructure.
No, if you look at transport, which is an example you've given, there's a need to have an integrated approach to transportation. And so, we have air transportation, like I said, we have inland waterways, we have rail. Those are similar type of infrastructure. Of course, if you looked at health, education, you also have infrastructure. So you can't, it's difficult to put everything in one place. It would just be unwieldy and inefficient.
Now, I'm trying to merge your thinking in terms of restructuring as a public servant and restructuring as a Nigerian.
Yes.
Now, when you look at Nigeria, as it were, and you're thinking of what restructuring should be as a Nigerian, perhaps what the role of the Bureau of Public Reforms should be, some people will say that it has an impossible mandate. Would you agree with them?
You mean that the Bureau has an impossible mandate?
Yes.
No, I'll say it has a difficult mandate. But it's certainly not impossible. And as part of that mandate, Nigerians have seen a lot of improvement in the public services, at least over the last, since 1999. And I can reel out so many. The concept of the public service is something that many people are not completely clear about. You see, the police is public service. The army is public service.
We will get to that shortly. Let me quickly take you up on this one. Let's start with the vision of the Bureau. It reads, the Bureau's vision is to drive change that will position Nigeria's public service as an institution of excellence. And the mission is to facilitate the building of Nigeria's public service into highly functional, professional, customer-focused, and result-oriented institution.
Yes.
Now, the word used there is institution,
yes.
not institutions or group of institutions, as a number of people might imagine that the public service will be. I mean, it's made up of numerous institutions. Is that deliberate?
Yes, and I think you need to understand the meaning of the word institutions in this sense. Institutions is the way things are done in a society. That's different from organizations. So the Bureau of Public Service Reform is an organization. The Nigerian Public Service is an institution. Marriage is an institution. Culture is an institution. So we're talking about building the public service as an institution, as the way things are done, into a vibrant one.
Well, you've clarified that when you're talking about the Bureau of Public Service, when you're talking about public service, you're talking about about 1.2 million people who draw their money, emolument, I should say, from the public till. But a lot of people think about the civil service. Now, does the Bureau also cover the states as well? No.
We're a federal bureau. However, we partner with states. So we've partnered with a number of different states, Kaduna states, Enugu, Lagos, a number that we've partnered with, Jigawa. Yeah. So we share experiences with them, but we're focused primarily on the federal public service.
So you're talking about 1.2 million people in the federal public service?
We're talking about 82,096 people who are civil servants, and an estimate of anywhere between 1.3 million and 1.9 million who are federal public servants. And I say an estimate because we haven't extended our biometric capture to cover all of the public service. That work is ongoing at the moment, so I cannot give you a certain figure of the size of the federal public service at the moment.
Does that include the National Assembly and the judiciary as well?
Yes, it includes the National Assembly, the judiciary, Mr. President, the Vice President. We're all public servants. Okay. It includes teachers and doctors and everybody that works in a federal government organization.
Well, you have been pretty vocal in terms of, what you perceive the public service should be and, what you think the problem is. I'm going to read to you quickly what you say about the Constitution, which you've already mentioned here, and you think that, part of the problem is with the Constitution. You say, our real enemy is inefficiency and waste. The supreme law of the land, the 1999 Constitution, enshrines a culture of inefficiency and waste in our governance system. It was written at a time when it could probably have never envisaged a Nigerian economy will ever slide into a recession. Our Constitution gives primacy to having a large state with focus on ensuring that all parts of the country share in that largesse. That is our real enemy. Were you referring to the Constitution there?
Yes, absolutely.
The Constitution is our enemy?
The provisions of the Constitution that provide for inefficiency within a large state structure is the real enemy, not the humble civil servant who goes to work trying to deliver a service for his country.
So how would you advise that we go about restructuring? Would you say we have to look at the Constitution again?
I think we need to take a very serious look at the Constitution again to address some of the issues that Mr. Vice President has talked about. Can we really afford 36 states? Can we afford 774 local governments? Can we afford a bicameral legislature who work full-time? Can we really afford it? I mean, these are fundamental questions. And so rather than, castigate one section of the public service as being bloated and being responsible for consuming 70% of the resources, we need to look at it in the round and look at all of the things. I gave you the example of the number of ministers Mr. President must have. It's possible that he may have wanted a reduced number of ministers, but the Constitution says he must have at least 36.
You are a public servant, and you're espousing these ideas, even saying things like the Constitution is our enemy. That's the Constitution that a number of public officers swore to protect and defend. How has this been received in numerous forums where you've had to give your lectures, for instance?
No, I think you need to wind back a little. Mm-hmm. What I said is that the aspects of the Constitution that have a sharing approach rather than a production approach and that focus on representation above everything else is the enemy when we talk about the cost of governance.
Dr. Abba,
so my article was about the cost of governance.
I'm going to ask you
that is the issue.
To hold your thoughts. We're going to continue a bit more on that when we return from this break.
Sure.
Just stay with us.